This is a BR Class 66 diesel-electric locomotive, typically used for freight operations in the United Kingdom. The reverser sets the direction between forwards and backwards. There are 3 types of brakes in this locomotive, and which one you use will depend on the situation. We'll learn more about the different brake types in future training modules. The throttle controls how fast the train accelerates. We want to move the train forwards, so move the reverser. Keep the brake control and release until you can see the brake pipe control needles are reading 5 bar, pointing upwards. This will release the brakes. Watch the brake cylinder, or BC gauge, to see it gradually reduce to 0, which tells you that the brakes are now fully released and applies. As you apply power, notice the amp bar rising. This is the amount of power being fed into the traction motors. Now that you've reached your target speed, you can move the throttle control back to 0. The train will then coast on level ground, and the train will only slow down very gradually. Brakes in this locomotive are lapped. Rather than directly selecting the brake force with a handle, you use the brake control to add or release braking force. Braking force will be held until you release it, as you did before setting off. Bring this train to a complete stop by holding the brake control in the apply state until you see the brake pipe control needle in the center of your cab desk showing about 4 bar. The amount of braking you'll need to apply also varies depending on whether you're going uphill or downhill, and how heavy your train is. That concludes this module. Restart the module to learn the steps again, or move on to the next module. In this training module, you'll be learning the basics of operating a steam locomotive. You'll be driving the Scania Class 8F steam locomotive. When you're ready, climb onto the footplate. Sit in the driver's position. Let's prepare the locomotive for departure. Set the reverser to full forward position. You'll need all available power when setting off. This locomotive has a combination brake that controls both steam and vacuum brakes. Steam brakes will apply on just the locomotive. Vacuum brakes will apply to the rest of the train, so long as it's equipped with vacuum brakes. The brakes are released when a vacuum is created. The driver can use the brake handle to destroy the vacuum, which will start to apply the brakes. To create a vacuum, the small ejector should be left open when the train is running. The large ejector can be used to more quickly increase the vacuum after coupling or heavy braking. Open the cylinder cocks. The regulator acts like the throttle. We're starting to pick up speed. Move the reverser toward mid-gear. This reduces the amount of steam let into the cylinders and saves energy. Come to a stop in the indicated location. Use the combination brake to apply some braking force and bring the train. Good work. That concludes all the basics of operating a steam locomotive, but there's still more to learn. If you want to dive into the specifics of how to operate a particular train, look for its training module in the training center. In this training module, you'll be learning advanced operations of a steam train, as well as basic passenger operations in a Scania 8F steam locomotive. When you are ready, set up the locomotive for driving. This locomotive has a combination brake that controls both steam and vacuum brakes. Steam brakes will apply on just the locomotive. Vacuum brakes will apply to the rest of the train, so long as it's equipped with vacuum brakes. To create a vacuum, you should use the ejectors. The small ejector should be left open when the train is running. The large ejector can be used to more quickly increase the vacuum after coupling or heavy braking. Open the cylinder cocks to remove any. The regulator acts like the throttle for steam locomotives. It controls how much steam is delivered into the cylinders. Slowly open the regulator to apply some power. Power. We're starting to pick up speed. Move the reverser toward mid. Prepare to stop at the next station, ready to perform passenger operations. Close the regulator and gently apply the combination brake to bring the train to a stop at our destination. Great work. To allow passengers to board, you will need to open the doors. Keep the doors open to allow enough time for passengers to board the train. Now that the passengers have boarded the train, close the doors. Now let's go to the next stop. Good work. This time, open the doors on the opposite side. Close the doors. Great job. That concludes training on passenger operations in a steam train. In this training module, you will learn how to refill this Scania 8F locomotive with water and coal before coupling up to a set of freight wagons. In this steam locomotive, the water and coal needed for operation are stored behind the cab, in what's known as a tender. Firstly, you'll need to prepare the locomotive to receive water. Walk over to the water crane, where you will need to move the water hose over the rear of the locomotive's tender. Now the hose is in position, climb up the tender and open the water hatch. Insert the hose into the tender tank once the water hatch is open. Great! The hose is in, and the tender tank is ready to be filled. Turn on the water and start filling the tender tank. Okay, now you need to fill the tender with coal. Move the train so that the tender is underneath the coal tower. Great work! The locomotive is now fully cooled, watered, and ready for service. Now, let's couple to the wagons. This locomotive and wagons use a hook-type coupler. Once you're close enough, you'll need to manually connect them to the locomotive. Slowly, come to a stop at the buffers of the wagons. You can couple either on foot or using the external camera. Good work. That concludes this training module.